In other news, the facilitator of the Inter-Burundi Dialogue believes that the opposing sides in the crisis in that country are almost irreconcilable in their tasks.
Former Tanzanian President Benjamin Mkapa addressed the UN Security Council on the lack of progress in facilitating dialogue between the parties in Burundi. The Secretary-General's latest report has found that the human rights and humanitarian situation in Burundi continues to worsen.
Believe me, Mr. President, I was lectured beyond imagination.
That was the weary-laden statement by the facilitator, who says parties to the political crisis see each other as illegitimate.
Each side claims to be the depository or the custodians of the Arusha Agreement and the Constitution. And the tendency is to see the other side as the criminals, and therefore they are the ones that should be visited with all the wrath of the power of the state or the power of the international community. You can see that this is a situation in which these two parties are almost irreconcilable in their tasks. But I have tried.
The United Nations says that while the political space in the country has narrowed, some 3 million people, or 25% of the population, required humanitarian assistance in 2016. 72% of the population was affected by malaria last year, and almost 400,000 Burundians have fled the country, a number that could reach 500,000 by the year's end. The organization has also highlighted potential risks at recommendations that the country abolish term limits, an issue that precipitated the crisis to begin with.
Burundi is still suffering from the electoral crisis of 2015 and continues to face multifaceted challenges, including ongoing serious human rights violations and abuses, mass displacement of people, and economic degradation. Any attempt to seek constitutional amendment to allow the president to stand for another term in office would, in the current political climate, risk intensifying the crisis and undermine collective efforts to find a sustainable solution to the current situation.
Burundi's envoy referred to any potential changes to term limits as a sovereign matter.
My delegation believes that referring to a fourth mandate, which hasn't even been announced by the president, is typical of the double standards that Burundi has been victim of ever since 2015, since such concerns have never been raised by any other UN authority in cases of fourth, fifth, sixth, or indeed seventh mandates elsewhere in the world.
Despite the lack of movement, the facilitator pointed to the next Heads of State summit of the East Africa Community in early April, where Burundi will likely be high on the agenda. Bryce-Pease, SABC News, New York.